What up, friends? It's the Shore Near Another World, and today we're going to be reviewing the newest album by St. Paul and the Broken Bones, The Alien Coast. This is the fourth studio album by the Alabama-based soul outfit St. Paul and the Broken Bones. This group is one of the few remaining that are practicing the OG incantations of R&B and soul music. No fusing it with modern elements here, they're keeping it classic, and they're just a true homage to the genre's roots. I say that, though with this new album, they are viewing the genre with more of a modern lens, being more free with their synth use, alongside combining it with some more modern psychedelic elements. The group have re-enhanced their sound to prevent it from going stale, though I actually think they could have taken it a bit further. After a soulful and bluesy opener with 3000 AD Mass, we get to the first main track of the record, Bermejo and the Devil. Right off the bat, you can tell the sound of this record is going to be a little bit different for them, with the gritty and ominous bass lines and haunting vocals. The vibe is sludgy and smoky, with those vocals that I mentioned earlier overhanging some pretty slick guitar riffs. The synth also supplies some pretty great support, giving the track a very well-rounded feel. The instrumental is, after all, a very big part of this track, as the vocals and lyrics tend to be a bit sparse, so it's great that they have some punch to them. They have a nice texture to them, and I feel like the tone of this track overall fits the lyrics about temptation and feeling lost in the world. We get a bit lighter and more groovy with the next track, Minotaur. I like how the vocals are getting a bit more dynamic here, alongside the twangy nature of the guitar and the groovier bass kind of melding together to make a nice combination. The track definitely still has a melancholic touch in the delivery, though, seemingly depicting a relationship that's either abusive or just like they're feeling trapped inside of it, drawing allusions to the Minotaur in the Maze myth. It's an interesting comparison, and that clean yet soulful instrumental really give this track a feel that you wouldn't really expect to hear, especially with these comparisons to that said myth. Atlas is one of the more synthy and electronic moments on the record. While I definitely did want them to take these aspects of their sound further, this one felt a little bit underdeveloped. It's an instrumental track, which admittedly I'm not too fond of to begin with. However, it feels like it takes a bit too long to get going, and then they don't really do much with that momentum. The jazz influence in the drumming, alongside the more psychedelic guitar, are nice. However, it feels like this track just doesn't have enough of a presence to it. Now, The Last Dance is a fun tune, man. These more disco-oriented beats, alongside the very slick bass line, makes this track stand out in a way that no other song on here does. I love that very dramatic synth in the background, alongside how the guitars and vocals swell into a very catchy chorus. Suave flows and pacing make this song very easy, yet also very entertaining to listen to. Like, they really respect your time on this one, while also giving you a pretty layered experience. That psychedelic instrumental bridge was very well done, and I feel like the vibes of this track overall are very fitting for the sort of apocalyptic dance groove that's expressed in the lyrics. It's essentially a song about trying to have fun to distract yourself from the chaos of the world, and I think it does so pretty effectively. The guitar focus of Ghost and Smoke does help give the track some identity, however, I feel like it's a bit too low-key for my liking. It's still smooth and has a sensual vibe to it, however, it kind of feels like filler here and there. The vocals are also a bit less interesting this time around too, feeling familiar in some parts, and yet kind of unprepared for where the track goes in others. Granted, I do think it fits the vibe of the record as a whole, however, I wish they had a few more elements that were thrown in to make the listening experience a little more dynamic, and it just feels a little bit simple compared to the rest of the record. The title track, Alien Coast, definitely does make an impression though, with that ominous opener to those punchy drums. I really love how they play with the reverb on this track, especially in the chorus. It's an interesting sound that you don't often hear purposefully emphasized in the mix. This is especially true as the lyrics are sort of lamenting how people are more fractured than ever these days. However, the speaker here is still trying to find the good in people and reconnect with them. Hunter and His Hounds is probably tied with The Last Dance for my favorite track on the record, from the very dramatic opening piano and synth to the very serious guitar riffs. This is a harsh track, but with a lighter side as the chorus comes around. This dynamic is very engaging and fits the lyrical content about dealing with a toxic person who is always trying to drag you down, maybe even like the betrayal of a friend or something too. It's fairly straightforward, but it's very lush and dynamic, and I think the addition of many other elements that add to the elegance of the track in the outro were also very well done. The next track, Tin Man Love, is a pretty interesting one. It's very synth and bass driven, carrying a pretty driving beat to it. It's almost like a weirdly funky poem, as it's fairly short and it doesn't really have the typical song structure, but it's pretty fun regardless. I do wish it was a bit longer and more flexed out, but I think it was pretty interesting for what it was, especially as it sort of is a short little view into what might be our future on the planet. It's just kind of an experimental little one-off, I guess. I have kind of similar opinions on Popcorn Ceiling that I did on Ghost and Smoke. It's not a bad track per se, but the pacing is a bit boring and it doesn't do too much new. Fairly simple guitar riffs and synths mainly serve to back up the vocals, however the instrumental kinda suffers because of that. The lyrics acting as sort of a letter to his love is a pretty interesting idea, however they're really too vague to get much emotion out of them, unfortunately. The final track, Love Letter from a Red Roof Inn, is more my speed when it comes to the slower paced songs. It has a sort of singer-songwriter vibe alongside some bluesy moments that help you craft the scenario in your mind. Some nice combinations of guitar and bass alongside some twinkly synths create a nice backdrop to what is essentially a lovesick ballad that's unapologetic about itself. It almost weirdly reminds me of a City and Color track, but viewed through more of a soul lens, which is pretty interesting and it's definitely a compliment from me. It's a simple closer, but I do think it's effective in delivering the emotion it was trying to. Now this was a pretty good album for the group overall, especially since they took their sound in a direction that not many in their genre do. They largely keep up their smooth vibes and passionate performances that their previous records were known for, but since it was getting a little bit stale, I'm glad they opted for something new. Like I said earlier, my biggest problem is really that they didn't take it far enough. I would have loved to see them take their synths and electronic flares even further, maybe even creating a weird combination of soul and new wave or something, I don't know, but just something interesting like that. There's also the case where it tends to be a bit more boring the moment it starts to slow down or strip itself back. The highlights for me are definitely the more lush and layered tracks on here, not necessarily the more simple ones. I'd like to see them continue this sound, but find a looser way to combine their sound with other genres, alongside making the lyrics a bit more elaborate and descriptive. I'm feeling a light 7 on this album. It was pretty good. Pretty nice listen. Of course, we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and I think this is a pretty cool album cover overall. It definitely fits the sort of spacey aesthetic, the sort of murky aesthetic that it occasionally has as well. It has the sort of clear-cut earth alongside the very sort of, not tie-dye, but colorful sky. I feel like it was a very effective way in showing off how this is a very different sound for the band. We have a bit more synths thrown in here and there, so I think as far as an evolution goes, the cover does sort of express that well. Of course, those are just my thoughts on this new album by the band. What did you guys think? Do you think this was also a pretty interesting experimentation for them, or did you prefer their more clear-cut sound that they went with previously? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell if you are also not from this earth, and until the next one, farewell.